Get going here in a minute. Figure out, let everybody get settled. Got my tweet out. Throw this sucker in Discord. My tweet out. Throw this sucker in Discord. Good jams. The only thing that's complicating is how I do the simulcast recording this to go out on the traditional pod channel. But I want to make sure that everybody that's watching on YouTube knows that at the end of the recording, I'm going to do a little lightning round of questions in the chat. But that's not something the podcasters need to hear. And frankly, I don't think that they need to. Bifurcate, I think is the word. Bifurcating the audience here. But I guess we can get going. So, yeah, I mean, if anybody, you guys are watching on YouTube, I see a few of you guys have trickled in already. Throw questions in the chat. I'll get to those at the end of the show. And yeah, that's the bonus for you YouTubers, I suppose. Keep it simple. It's Monday, so you guys know what day it is, or what time it is, or what it is that corresponds with Monday. Great intro, Dan. It's reverse chronological lightning round Monday. We got a weekend to recap. Weekend number 8 in the fantasy season. We're 2 months into this thing. We are officially a third of the way through the NBA season, which is kind of crazy. But also it affords us this luxury of now kind of knowing what players are. The great leveling has now officially occurred. You know, around 6 weeks, it's pretty much settled. By 8 weeks, I think we can feel pretty confident of what we're getting out of players. You'll see guys shift little bits, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. They kind of move up and down the board, but overall, they're going to kind of come back to where they are. With the exceptions, of course, of guys that have missed time. Someone like a Dame, who got off to like a start in the 40s when his shooting was low and his turnovers were high, and now he's back and he's just thumping people. And LeBron is actually another really good example of that. He got off to a really slow start, but he's basically been a first rounder since coming back from his last injury, or kind of around the turn, roughly, because his assists are a tiny bit low. So you'll see guys like that continue to settle in a little bit. But overall, we kind of know what we're into right now, which is what made these last couple weeks so fun, frankly, because stars are actually coming back at the same time as teams that realized certain things weren't working are trying new things. So we've had ads, like traditional rest of season guy that could have value for the next 3.5 months ads, at the same time as streamers are dissipating. Kind of a fun little thing that's come together. Welcome to the show, everybody. Fantasy NBA Today, that's the name. I think you all probably know that by now. I am your host, Dan Vespris. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Vespris, DanBesbris. Pretty much blown away. And I don't know. I mean, I've become weirdly obsessive about it, but we're close to 14,700 people on Twitter that actually care about the dumb crap I'm saying. So thank you all for following. It's a big deal because it allows me to get information to you throughout the day, and it allows me to get you information about the cool stuff going on at Sports Ethos, which right now I want to try to do this a little more regularly on the pod, but just to kind of throw something at you guys. Ethos Wagering. Those guys, okay, so, and this is going to sound a little bit catty, but that's not really what it's meant to be. Because sports betting has become so much more mainstream, a lot of websites have asked their traditional basketball analysts to get into sports betting. That's a recipe for disastrous stuff. So the I'm trying to pick the right words because I don't want to sound like I'm calling anybody out. You guys know that that's never my intention here. But people that are just learning how to bet sports and then doing it as an analyst on top of everything else are not going to be that good at it. You need time to dedicate exclusively to that side of your equation, what you're learning how to do, as opposed to like trying to do it while you're learning. You're going to lose people a ton of money. The reason I bring this up is because we didn't do it that way. And you guys know I have a history in sports betting. I worked for pregame.com for a couple of years. I hosted actually the first ever sports handicapping podcast way back in 2009. It was called Today in Sports Betting. We've resurrected it here at Sports Ethos. These guys were not traditional basketball analysts. They were sports bettors that we have then brought on to run a sports betting division. So you can bug them if you got questions. It's at Ethos Wagering. Yes, we sell something over there, obviously, because you got to power the locomotive. But you can talk to those guys about anything you want. Ethos Wagering, again, they're amazing. Blake LaWatch runs the whole division. Bug them, because that's the way you should do it. Don't be following a random basketball analyst who's like, oh, by the way, now I do sports betting now. It's happening at a lot of the really big websites where folks like desperately need to take 2 years to just go into a hole, and the people that are paying them are not going to let them do that. So like the CBS's, the Yahoo's, place like that. Before you guys think that I'm like, again, calling somebody out, I just know someone's going to try to misinterpret this crap. And it's not that way. I know the big sites are like, hey, you guys got to do this now. Because you see the way that is in the community. It's like if someone came to me and was like, Dan, do DFS. And I'd be like, and I'd fart out a DFS lineup. And it'd be terrible because I don't know what I'm doing. But that's what's happening at big websites. ESPN, hey, you guys got to go talk about sports betting now. Like, you know what you're saying. They don't. Follow our guys because this is what they've done for their lives. Not fantasy and then, or like not even fantasy. Fantasy, at least you got a shot because you're like deep into the numbers on that stuff. We're talking about like the talking heads, that have taught to talk sports betting now. They suck at it. Historically, I mean, there's like plenty of stories from the 80s and 90s of these guys that have amassed incredible betting debts. They try to tell you who to put money on. Well. Let's talk about fantasy basketball, okay? Because that's what we're here to do. We got a reverse chronological lightning round weekend to go back through, and there's a lot of good stuff to cover. Starting with Sunday. Last week, I actually went backwards from the evening through to the morning. And it was confusing, but I'm going to do it again because if I'm going to call it reverse chronological lightning round, that's just how we're going to do it. Milwaukee lost in Houston. Whoopsies. That's a real oopsies of a ball game. Chris Middleton turned his ankle. We waited 6 freaking weeks for this dude to come back from his arm situation, and he made it a week, basically, before turning an ankle. Let's hope it's not too bad. Middleton, for what it's worth, he generally doesn't have a lot of these little tweaks. That hasn't been the MO. It's been, if it's one big thing that kind of knocks him out. But, I mean, this is part of why the big adage over here is don't draft injured players. And I got hornswoggled into Chris Middleton because the Bucks did not give an indication that he was going to be out for a ton of time to start the year. But we're stuck with it now. And I have him in like 3 places, which is crushing. But this is what can happen. Guys come back. They're trying to basically have their preseason during the season. And you'd be like, Dan, a turned ankle could happen to everybody. Yeah, it sure can. But for everybody else, they would have logged 6.5 weeks of games already. It's a little different when you have 22 games under your belt and then turn an ankle as opposed to 3 and then turn an ankle. Grumble. Javon Carter's going to get a little bump. Grayson Allen's going to get a little bump. I'm not dealing with any of that stuff. Just sort of let it float on by. Brook Lopez was quieter. I mean, everybody was quieter. The Bucks scored 92 points. But lucky for us, Brook still got his 3 blocks, and that's been able to float his value. So he remains at number 15 per game. He's played in 25 ball games this year. Brook Lopez is number 11. First rounder by totals. Do you want to trade him? You can if you want to, but you better get a second rounder back at this point. He's done it for 2 months now. Why abandon ship on a guy that might win you blocks weekly? On the Houston side, Tara Eason 13 minutes in this one. He was part of a unit that just got crushed, so got the hook. And this is the problem with being a reserve where your minutes aren't guaranteed. You guys have heard me talk about this basically every single ball game he's played over the last 3 weeks because I started getting a ton of questions about him. I never know what actually spurs people to start hitting me with questions about particular players. I assume I feel like it's usually tied to Roto World doing a blurb on a guy that's like, here he comes. And then everybody's like, do I need to do something? And I said it 3 weeks ago. I said it 2 weeks ago. I said it 1 week ago. I'll say it today. We're a little too early. He's a luxury stash right now. He is good enough on the head-to-head side. In a 4-game week, he's a worthwhile start because over a 4-game week, even a guy who's ranked in the 120s, 130s is putting up enough value. Sort of think about it like a weekly format type of move. But overall, 8.5 points, 5 and change rebounds, good steals numbers, very low turnovers, good free throw percent. He's close, but he's not quite there yet. That's what I meant when I kept saying we're too early. When I say we, I kind of mean whoever's started this snowball rolling downhill. On the season is at 18.5 minutes. Over the last 2 weeks, he's at 19.5 minutes. So, I guess you could say that things are kind of trending in the right direction, but, over the last week, he's at 19. So it's not really changing all that much. And over the last week, he is number 81, but he's also shooting 59% from the field, and he's made two or three of his free throws. So, low volume, but 2.4 combined defensive stats. That's the stuff we're looking at with him. You can see it's more than an outline. It's a very clearly drawn Sharpie of good fantasy stat set. But until Eric Gordon gets out of the way, it's just not happening. I mean, 1 rebound and 2 steals yesterday with 3 fouls and an 0 for 2 shooting. That's basically nothing. That's like what Middleton did, and he didn't even play. He played 6 minutes and got hurt. So I'm not trying to compare Eason to Middleton. They're very different fantasy players. One of them is a multiple-time All-Star. The other one is a guy just trying to find a foothold in the NBA. And yeah, do I think Eason ends up with more minutes later on this year? I feel like the answer almost has to be yes, but we don't know how high it goes. Does it go to 20, 22, 24? Does Gordon finally get moved? So, luxury stash. You can't play him in Roto because you never know what game it's going to work. Atlanta beat Chicago 123-122. They got just enough out of their guys. Most notably, Clint Capella, another really good game for Clint, and he's sitting top 40 on the year. He's been a big win, getting drafted down in the 80s this season. Onyeka Okongwu had a pretty good ball game there, but he continues to be again, kind of a fill-in type. Bogdan Bogdanovic is going to get a day off for rest, but he's been awesome with DeJounte Murray out in particular. I am curious what he looks like when all three, if we're going to include him as sort of a high-volume guy, are all healthy at the same time. Because Trey, DeJounte, those are the clear 1 and 2 in the pecking order. Bogdan would be probably the number 3, but kind of like jammed in there with John Collins when he's healthy. DeAndre Hunter came back. But again, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds in this one. The question for those of us kind of recapping a weekend and getting reset on the fantasy side, do we stream any of these guys is the short iteration of this. Now, Bogdanovic, you could call a stream for now. I mean, I think you could probably call him a rest of season guy. Someone that does this much with basically one guy out in front of him. That's kind of too big of a leap to say something. Well, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nomenclature. DeAndre Hunter, AJ Griffin are the two guys that you're kind of semi-looking at. Hunter, and neither one of them has a particularly good fantasy game. They mostly are scoring. Hunter, a few rebounds here and there. Griffin, a few steals here and there. I think we can probably pass on those guys, with perhaps the exception of this game, because Trae Young is questionable. Bogdanovic is getting a rest day. Sure, if you want to go Hunter, because he's probably going to get 17, 18 shots, have at it. Griffin's probably going to get 17, 18 shots. That's fine for a one-day thing. I don't know that I would trust them in additional ball games. On the Chicago side, Ayo Dosunmu left this one after, a quarter and a half, dealing with he took a shot to the abdomen. Alex Caruso's been out. If you really wanted to get audacious, you could try streaming Kobe White. But again, I just feel like we talk about a Bogdanovich, and we'll come up across some other names as we work our way through this weekend backwards. There are better options, both on the streaming side and on the rest of season side. Toronto lost again. The Raptors are a little sickly these days. Brew likes to talk about Aaron Brewski, for those that don't know who Brew is. Brew likes to talk about teams being kind of sick, like an ill box score. Not in like the 90s sick or ill. That would be a good thing. I'm talking about like actually under the weather. And Toronto's box scores are under the weather. I know OG Anunoby wasn't healthy for this game, but everybody's got somebody out at this point of the season. Freddie VanVleet's shot still isn't really working. How far has he fallen at this point? 59, almost exclusively because he's turned into a full punt field goal guy, and you almost can't stomach what he's done to that. But he is a buy low because it kind of can't get any worse than it is right now. Gary Trent slid into the starting lineup. He was solid. He was one of the few semi-positives for the regulars on this team. Siakam was bad. Scotty Barnes was atrocious. I think this game might have dropped him out of the top 100, and it did. Scotty Barnes, number 102. You guys may recall during draft season, we talked about, okay, where is this magical extra value coming from for him? And it was the weird, I think Josh and I talked about this, Josh Lloyd, where was the point guard Scotty Barnes really going to happen? Because Freddie's still there and Siakam's still there. And these are the guys that are handling the ball first. And it hasn't materialized. There isn't really an obvious play here with Toronto, unless we find out that Anunoby's going to miss a bunch of ball games. That would be Chris Boucher. But it seems like we kind of missed that one because it had already happened. As far as Orlando goes, I do have a couple of thoughts on the Magic. First of all, Mo Bamba jumped over Mo Wagner for playing time in this ballgame. Now, Wagner did have foul trouble, but Bamba was playing better. He was a plus 11, so they sort of let him ride. Wagner was a -2 in his minutes on the floor. I think you generally, with Orlando, stream whoever the starting center is. But if these two guys do fall into a total timeshare until Wendell Carter Jr. comes back, then feel free to move on. Bol slowing. He did the Brook Lopez thing here where he still got his blocked, and so that'll keep his value from tapering off much, even on a slower ball game, and that's good news. But he has taken a step back in recent months. Where the heck is Bol at right now? We're looking at. There we go. Switch it up. I'm looking at totals. Bol's number 56. Scotty Barnes is actually number 115 because he has been healthy. So, for Bol, he hasn't fallen that far yet because of the defensive stats, because he is very unicorn-esque. But we've all seen the tapering. And I ran a couple polls on Twitter over the weekend, and I think we have a few names that you might be able to exchange him for, but we'll do that over on social media. So that'll, again, be at Dan Bespris over on Twitter, and we'll talk about if you wanted to abandon ship on the Bol thing. And I don't know that you have to, because I think a lot of folks are panic selling him. He's still probably going to be okay. But, the rigors of an NBA season are kind of laying into him a little bit. Also of note, Cole Anthony outplayed Markelle Fultz in this one. Fultz, once again, had foul issues. There's other stuff going on with him. So you're holding there, but we're seeing some of the limitations as he kind of gets into the swing of things. And then you'll see the rust come off, but then you'll see the fatigue come in. And there's all these things that he kind of needs to work his way through. For Anthony, he's extremely up and down, just like Fultz has been so far. I don't know that either of them is a safe start on the roto side. I'm not, frankly. If you want to know what I'm doing, I'm not starting either of them in roto. You could probably start both of them when the Magic have a good stretch of schedule on the head-to-head side. Because, again, that's where you're like, okay, top 120 in a good schedule. That makes sense. Magic are off until Wednesday. I think a Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, Monday. So starting on Wednesday, they do have 4 games in 6 days. If you waited until Friday, it would be 3 games in 4 days. So that might be your opportunity if you wanted to shoot some Orlando Magic into your lineup. Working our way backwards. The Knicks beat the Kings 112-99. Kings have been a bit more pedestrian without De'Aaron Fox. Not a huge surprise. They're still fine, but they need him. 14-11 overall. So that's the good news. Kings are well on their way to beating the season win total. Thank goodness, because I have a lot of money riding on that over. Please, Kings, find some victories here, even with Fox out. With no Fox around, it's going to make a lot of guys more interesting. Malik Monk has been extraordinarily cold, but he has just this massive opening with Fox hurt. Kevin Huerter has taken a little better advantage of it, but for some reason can't hit a free throw right now. The whole Kings team couldn't hit a free throw in this game. And then Keegan Murray has been better the last couple of games. And I don't want to go down the long Keegan Murray thing because there's so much nuance with this rookie discussion that people keep the lack of nuance on Twitter is really hard. And I guess that's why the podcast or the video cast is a better venue to talk about this stuff. But for some reason, after I called Keegan Murray a buy low early in the season, people started saying that I was very pro Keegan, which, as you guys know, longtime listeners of the podcast, even short-time listeners of the podcast, you guys know I hate rookies. I'm like old-timey Rick Carlisle with these guys. I won't play him. New Rick Carlisle, he plays rookies sometimes. But old-time Rick Carlisle, you wouldn't touch him. But as we've talked about with the idea of the sell high doesn't mean abandon ship. It means lock in value. Buy low doesn't mean do whatever you can to go get a guy. It means lock in value on the flip side. So when Murray was disastrous the first 5 weeks to start the year and he was getting dropped in a lot of places, you pick him up because we know how this arc goes. Rookies are bad for a couple months, then they're sort of bad for a month, and then they're mediocre for a couple weeks, and then they're okay. But you got to get there, and it doesn't happen overnight. Jalen Brunson turned an ankle. Everybody wants to turn an ankle on Sunday. You're not cool unless you turn your ankle. My hope is that Emmanuel Quickley gets a little bit of breathing room here. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but damn it, we can dream. We can dream. If Quickley gets a start, I don't know that it actually makes him that much better from a fantasy standpoint, but the Knicks are off until Wednesday, so we don't have to do anything about it right now anyway. Then they've got a Wednesday, Friday double dip in Chicago. They got the Bulls, both of those games, and both of them on the road. The reason I say I don't know if starting makes Quickley better is that then suddenly he's going to have to line up in the usage freight train behind Julius Randle and RJ Barrett, and it's sort of better that he can come off the bench and chuck a little bit. But Quickley's fun. He has a cool fantasy game. Field goal percent is going to hurt you a little bit, but he can score, he can assist, he can hit the three, he's good at free throws, he gets some steals. Starting, obviously if he plays 32 minutes instead of 24, it's better for him, but I don't know if it moves him as far forward as we need. Regardless, we'll check in on that in about 36 hours time. Mitchell Robinson was in foul trouble. It didn't really matter for Isaiah Hartenstein. He got 26 minutes. That's the good news. Bad news is 4 points, 9 boards, and a steal just isn't going to get the job done. And it just seems like it's not going to be the year. Well. Lakers beat Detroit. Big games from Anthony Davis and LeBron. 34 and 35 points for the two of those superstars. Lonnie Walker still just barely doing enough to maintain his spot on rosters. So hold him on rosters. And then for Detroit, they've become a weird, almost lightning rod for me to talk about on this podcast. So screw it, we'll do it again. We almost need to go through Detroit player by player, slowing us down here on this reverse. It's not a lightning round when you get to the Pistons. All right, here's where I am with the Pistons. First, Jaden Ivey. Not good, 9 cat right now. Probably will be by February. Sort of a luxury stash. Similar thing, but a little bit better. Not ranking-wise, but just sort of like an easier path to getting over that hump because he's playing and doing stuff right now, and he has one of the highest usage rates on the team. Isaiah Stewart, he's a hold for me. He was fine yesterday, but not great. He's more kind of in that streamer territory. And when I say streamer, I don't mean the super stream, like he's filling in for an injured guy. I mean more of like the schedule streamer land. But centers are hard to come by these days, so that probably pushes him maybe more towards the hold side. Jalen Duren. Starting, I know, Isaiah Stewart, technically the power forward. Jalen Duren starting at center for Detroit. He didn't really get involved on offense in this game, and a lot of that has to do with going up against Anthony Davis as at the 5 on the other side, and Duren didn't get a bunch of time against Thomas Bryant. That was when Marvin Bagley was out there, so he got to be a little bit more aggressive, I should say. Bagley, no. Duren, yes. I'm hanging on to Duren. I liked what I saw. Really good energy on the glass. A little bit Jared Vanderbiltian. You guys get what I'm going at here. Rebounds, dunks, steals, and blocks. And if I can get those things, and if he can only take 2 free throws a game, I'll be satisfied. His free throw stroke has been awful so far this year, but he shot 63, I believe, percent in his last year at college. So there's reason for optimism that the 49% is going to trend up kind of out of the full tank mode and into just it's hurting you a little bit zone. And those bigs are hard to come by. So hold on, Duran. Hold on, Stewart. Ivy the stash. Sadiq Bey, meh. I'm not into it. Burks, no. And then obviously Bojan Bogdanovic is a start. He's the one guy on that team that's consistently inside the top 100, top 90, top 80, whatever. I don't know, man. Like, you guys keep yelling at me about how I'm not bullish enough on Killian Hayes. I think I'm just bullish enough. I think I'm almost exactly the right amount of bullishness on Hayes. He's been like around a top 100 fill-in for Cade Cunningham. And he's going to have a game or two where he pops off and has a top 50 line. And then he's going to have a game where he goes cold as ice and he's top, 175. And it's going to level out to around probably 90 to 115. And that's useful because, again, you can hunt assists. You can hunt steals. Those are pretty reliable with him, even on bad games. The stuff that bounces way up and down, field goal percent, turnovers, free throw percent, stuff like that, scoring and threes. If those are not the things you're hunting, if you just want assists and steals, he's pretty consistent in those. And then the other stuff fluctuates. Joel Embiid, the big line of the weekend, 53 and 12. Oh, boy. He's back, and he is roaring. Over the last month, he's number 2, just behind Anthony Davis. Overall on the year, Embiid is up to number 5 now. He's passed a lot of names that he was behind a week ago, actually. I think he was like in the 17, 18 range, and he's just been storming since then. He's basically in a dead heat with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for that 4-5 spot. They're just a tiny bit behind Steph Curry, who's just a tiny bit behind Kevin Durant, and then everybody's way behind Anthony Davis, running away with it right now. But hey, look, I wasn't nearly bullish enough on Anthony Davis. I'll give you that. I do have him in 1 or 2 spots, thank goodness. Remember the guys? I remember back in, I think it was in August, I did a series of 5 shows or 6 shows on who had the best shot to be number 2 in fantasy this year, and we landed on Kevin Durant and Joel Embiid. Doesn't seem so crazy right now. 4 of the 5 starters for Philly are good to go. That's fine. Terry Rozier has been a little better lately. Folks, I don't know if we've all noticed it, but Terry Rozier over the last 2 weeks is number 52, and that's without defensive stats. So we got something a-brewing. Meanwhile, Jalen McDaniels has kind of found himself a little bit. The first time that Gordon Hayward was out, Jalen didn't really do anything. This time, he's kind of doing stuff. He's inside the top 100 over the last week. I'm officially putting him on the Superstream board. Superstream, again, doesn't mean that they are like the most superest. It's not like Super Mario where these... Actually, you know what? It is like Super Mario. That's a perfect analogy. It's guys who come in as little tiny and they chow down on a magic mushroom. The mushroom being someone in front of them gets hurt and then they get big. That's what happened with Jalen McDaniels. He wasn't very good. Guys went down in front of him. He's big now. Perfect. That's the perfect analogy. What it's not, to call him a Superstream, indicates how high they are on the board. It just means that they're a player that bounces from one side of the cut line to the other because of an injury. Maybe I should take the name stream out of it because that's been kind of confusing for folks. Everybody thinks that they hear streamer and they think guy I plug in when they have a good schedule. I've referred to those guys for a long time as schedule streamers and these injury bump guys as super streamers, but perhaps that's not clear enough, and that's fine. We'll clean it up. I'll come up with a new name. I'm not going to do it on the fly on a podcast, but we'll clean it up. And then the first game on Sunday, lunchtime out here, Pacific Coast, the Larry Nance show, dare we call... No, it's not fair. Nance was awesome again in a competitive game. McCollum finally had a good ball game. Boy, did he need one of those. My goodness, CJ has been quite bad lately. I mean, the team is winning, so that's good. He's number 76 overall. This game jumped him about 15, 20 slots up the board, so that was also really good. He was always a buy low down in the 90 range, but I do think that he settles probably more in the 60 zone this year. I don't think he gets up into that 35, 40 spot where some of the hope was. Meanwhile, willing to admit, I was too low on Zion. He looks awesome this year, and he's playing, which is a big deal because that's one of the fears. Now, obviously, that could disappear at some point, but Zion's excellent. He's been number 41. Over the last month, he's been at a 75% free throw clip, which, again, that's one of those little things. Like you turn a guy, what we were just talking about with Jalen Duren, although with Zion, he actually takes a lot of free throws. Just going from being a punt free throw guy to a I'm real bad free throw guy in fantasy is a huge difference for a player's rank, because now if you have Zion shooting 75% on his high volume instead of 70 or 71, you really only need like DeMar DeRozan to cover him up. Maybe that's not a great example because you'll lose 3-pointers. You really only needed Damian Lillard at the front of your draft to cover him up, as opposed to before, you needed both of those guys. And it tanks what you can do with the rest of your team. Zion, at least for the moment, hasn't been that the last month. So kudos. Zion's kicking butt. It's fun to watch him succeed. Like when I'm fading him on a fantasy draft, it's not because I don't want him to be good. It's because I haven't seen it yet. And I didn't have any reason to believe that he was going to just sort of fix his free throws. Defensive stats have also been better for Zion so far. So it's possible that he settles back down a little bit, but he's been very good and his team is winning. Trey Murphy, I still call him a super. I got in a bunch of arguments with folks on Twitter, and it's a nomenclature thing because I called him a super stream. Everybody's like, no, he's not a streamer. I'm like, okay, fine, but like, please try to understand why I used that terminology. Trey Murphy came off the bench behind a healthy Pels team for 9 days, November 4th through November 12th. I'm counting the days at both ends to make it 9. In those games, he was in the 160 range. That's the only real data we have on Trey with a healthy Pelicans team. Will the Pels be fully healthy all year? Right now, it seems like the answer is no. It's happened for a week and a half out of 8 weeks of basketball. That's not a lot. So Murphy's been able to basically just be a starter for the whole season, and he's number 49 on a per-game basis. But what happens if the usage rug gets yanked out from underneath him? We still don't know. Obviously, you're starting him while he's a starter for this team, and Herb and BI are still out. So no change to what you're doing there. But what I am seeing is that I dramatically need to change my nomenclature because the term superstream has been pulled in all of the wrong directions, and I'll come up with something new. Najee Marshall was good again. Not good enough for me to trust it long term. Dyson Daniels was good again, but same kind of thing. I don't know if I can take the plunge. Now, if Daniels is starting, that does make it a little bit of an easier move to make. We'll see. The one that you definitely need to be all over is Larry Nance. And frankly, talking about him a half an hour into a podcast is burying the lead. We talked about him at great length late last week because the Pels finally had some games that weren't blowouts. And remember, we went through all of their recent box scores, how every game for the Pels was a blowout win or loss, except for one game against Oklahoma City like 2.5 weeks ago. And Nance was hurt for that one or sick or something. I don't remember what kept him out. But 2 games back against Detroit was the first time Nance had been active in a competitive Pels game in almost 3 weeks. Now you got 3 competitive Pels games in a row, and Nance is a superstar, which is what we've always known about Larry. When he gets decent minutes, he's a fantasy stud. On the year now, Nance is number 66 9-cat in 23 minutes per game. He is a rest of season ad. People are like, well, what about Brandon Ingram and Herb? Yeah, but guess what? He's playing center. He's taking JV's minutes. Couple of minutes at power forward here and there, but mostly center. Willie Hernan-Gomez played like a minute and a quarter in yesterday's game. Like the center minutes are basically Nance when it's not JV. And these competitive games, and I know Valanciunas had some foul issues, but he wasn't going to be able to hang with Phoenix anyway. Do I need Nance to play 34 minutes a game? No. Would I like him to? Sure. 34 minutes a game, he's probably a top 30 fantasy play. Maybe better. Not going to happen, but 23? Absolutely, we can get to that. Larry Nance, maybe, arguably, your ad of the weekend. Folks that are watching on YouTube, I want to remind all of you guys, and there's quite a few of you now that have trickled in here. At the end of the podcast, I am going to be doing a YouTube chat lightning round. So if you have a question and you're just chilling at work watching the show, throw it into the YouTube live chat. After I finish the recorded pod, you'll hear me say goodbye to everybody on the recorded side. Then I'm going to transition over to the chat room. Also, please hit the like button and subscribe. Please, it's down there below the screen. Find me on the Twitters. I can't figure out what direction to point my finger here. There it is. At Dan Vespers. I do a lot. Ask anybody in the chat room. I do a lot of stuff on Twitter throughout the day, every day. Again, like and subscribe makes a huge difference. We're really working hard to grow this YouTube channel. We actually have 2 YouTube shows today. Another one coming up at 2 o'clock. Steve Vidovich, our director of content, is doing a weekly or a week ahead type of show where he's going to help you with streamers and schedules and all that kind of cool stuff. So that'll be coming up here on YouTube at 2 o'clock. And now we'll dive back into the actual scheduled podcast. As we flip from Sunday back to Saturday, this feels like a good a time as any to remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you by our pals at manscaped.com, the land of male grooming. Remember what Bruce said a few weeks back on one of our live shows? He was talking about how there's very rarely a company that devises an item where everybody simultaneously goes, oh, dang. That was manscaped.com, whenever it was, 5-6 years ago when they came out with their stuff. And you guys can see it. Those of you watching on YouTube today, you can see as I kind of scroll through some of the stuff on their website. First of all, you got to know our coupon code. It's Ethos20, Ethos20 to get 20% off and free shipping on your order. I know that they're going to kill me for this. I say it every time. The Lawnmower 3.0 is, in my estimation, the best sideburn trimmer ever made. You can see it. It's on sale from $80 down to $70. Our coupon code will knock another $14 off of that. So that'll be just $56 and free shipping. $56 and free shipping to get the last sideburn trimmer you will ever need in your life. That's that. It's as simple as that. It's sleek. Comes in this really neat case. You can see the size of it. It's handheld. It's water resistant. And my favorite part, it is pinch free. Ethos 20% off and free shipping on your order over at manscaped.com. Get the Lawnmower 3.0 or any of their very cool products. This is a really cool one too. It's called the Crop Shaver. It's a 3-blade razor. Everything that they talk about, they refer to in terms of groin, but it doesn't have to be. The shears, the luxury nail kit, there's one that doesn't have to do with the groin. Check them out. They've been partners with us for, I think this is our 3rd season with Manscaped, and that's because you guys have done your part to go get cool stuff over there, and then they keep coming back to us. Let's see. What do we got here? Saturday. Let's go through Saturday. We'll do it backwards also. We'll try to pick up the pace a little bit here. Portland, no real news there other than, Anthony Simons had a really good shooting game, but we've already seen with Jeremy Grant, some of the role stuff trending down with Damian Lillard back. You knew that was going to happen. Are they still going to be decent? Yes, but they're not going to be where they were. More importantly from this game, on the Minnesota side, we've now seen Kyle Anderson, slow-mo, get big minutes in a couple in a row. And it seems like maybe they tried a couple of things. We're like, maybe we can be better. We can fill in with somebody else. And then they ultimately came back to slow-mo. He looks like an awesome fill-in for Karl Anthony Towns. Do it with confidence in a way that Jalen Noel, you just can't because he's so reliant on scoring. Slow-mo is reliant on nothing. He'll score a little, rebound a bunch, assist a bunch, steals, blocks, percentages are pretty good. It's a lot to like with slow-mo on the fantasy side. And basically every time he's gotten starter minutes in his career, he's been a good fantasy play. I've gotten a lot of questions about Jaden McDaniels while we're hovering over the Timberwolves. He's still number 96 on the season. But admittedly, a lot of the stuff that we were hoping we would get out of him, which would be like more than 3 rebounds per game, hasn't been there. He's been able to float his value with a steal and a block and a three-pointer. He's a Danny Green 1-1-1 guy right now and good field goal percent, but not many rebounds. That's been a little bit disappointing. I'll be perfectly square with you. And he had 0 in this game. And I know he and Slow-Mo are sort of like small forward, power forward. And I know Rudy Gobert is going to get a lot of them. But, if you're a wing or a forward, I need you playing starters minutes. You got to get me more than 3 boards. And so for McDaniels, you probably look for your next opening to maybe 1 or 2 good ball games in a row. You could swap him for somebody else that's also in that kind of 90 to 110 range that just feels a little bit more comfortable. Like, frankly, I think I'd probably rather have Royce O'Neal. They're right neck and neck. O'Neal's in a brutal shooting slump, so his field goal percent is down to 37 and change on the year. But, he'll probably have a week coming up where he shoots 60%, and then he rockets forward in a way where, with McDaniels, yeah, you get the better field goal percent, but lower rebounds, lower assists, similar steals. I guess McDaniels has the blocks edge right now, but fewer three-pointers. John Konchar's been good in there. Mike Conley's actually in that range. Probably can't get him there, but worth a shot. Oddly, Giannis Antetokounmpo's in that range, but clearly that isn't happening. Let's keep working our way through this thing. Denver. I think now, by the way, with Bones, I think we can also pretty well settle into this notion that he's a schedule stream level play. KCP, probably the same story. Bruce Brown is probably also the same story there now. For a while, Bruce Brown was a super stream. And again, I'm going to come up with a better word today. I'll figure it out on Twitter. But now that Jamal Murray's taking 20 shots a game, there just sort of isn't enough. And we thought that with Brown, there'd be enough rebounds or assists. Denver's become much more Jamal and Jokic-centric offensively. And so they're also then getting all of the assists. So I think we can probably move on from the Bruce Brown stream, except again, if Denver has a stretch of, 3 games in 4 nights or something like that. And otherwise, Jokic, Murray, and then if he ever comes back, Michael Porter Jr. might be your only starts in all formats at some point soon. We'll see. The Utah Jazz are without a few players in this game. Conley was resting. Sexton has a hurt hammy. Lauri Markkanen was still out with his illness. Walker Kessler moved back to the bench, interestingly. Maybe they wanted to kind of protect him from Nikola Jokic. But the fact that he's getting 20-plus minutes means he stays on rosters. He's a block meister. Absolute behemoth at blocking shots. So keep Walker Kessler on your roster. The minutes are high enough now to where it warrants keeping him there. Now, we'll see what happens when Markkanen comes back. It's possible that things trend back the wrong way. But for now, he's a hold, as is Jared Vanderbilt, whose minutes have ticked up just the littlest bit. Also could be Markkanen related, but you had to like the 3 steals in that last ball game as well. No, you're not adding Taylor Horton-Tucker. No, you're not adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is going to get a little bit more to do as long as Colin Sexton is out. But when Conley and Clarkson and Markkanen are all in there, most likely for their next ball game, this thing shifts a ton. The one that's right on the borderline for me is Malik Beasley, who has been good enough to start when one player is out. And so if that's Sexton, then Beasley probably still gets the Besbris thumbs up. Golden State beat Boston 123-107. I thought Grant Williams would be a better fill-in for Horford, but he had a bad one, and then he had another bad one, and then he got tossed. So, shuffle along. Not adding Blake Griffin. Klay Thompson, by the way, last month, inside the top 30. Might not have seen it. Also, worth pointing out, Jason Tatum has started to come back down where we all thought he would be, which was kind of in that 8 to 10 range. He's number 7 right now. Who's in jeopardy of passing him? Hard to say. Maybe Kyrie, maybe Harden. So maybe he does stay at 7. Maybe Halliburton. But either way, he's no longer in that top 2 or 3. Still very, very good. But he wasn't going to shoot 50% all season long. That's not his shot profile. If he was right in front of the rim every time, I'd have a little bit of a different tack. He isn't. The question of who was going to fill in for Andrew Wiggins is Jordan Poole. So that one we can just kind of move along because he's already on rosters anyway. Dallas sat Luka in the back-to-back. Just something to keep in the back of our minds if they do it again. Dinwiddie, big bump. Christian Wood, big bump. Tim Hardaway Jr. Was already taking a lot of shots. He'll get a bunch anytime Luka sits, but he's been cold now after that hot streak, and then you probably don't go any farther than that. For Chicago, we've already talked about them. I guess we'll see what happens with Caruso. If he had started to carve out a weird little sort of steals niche in that starting unit, but, meh. Cleveland, I think they're hoping to get Donovan Mitchell back for their next ball game, so let's not even worry about their box score from Saturday. Oklahoma City, what an annoying team to handicap. We do this year after year after year, and I keep saying I don't want to do it, and then I do it anyway, and what I'm talking about is getting suckered in by the Oklahoma City roulette wheel, which landed firmly on Alexei Pokusevski in this ball game. 16-14, 5 assists, 3 blocks, massive game. 35 minutes, 34 and a half. He might play 19 in the next one. And that's what happened to Jeremiah Robinson-Earl. After he had really good minutes for about 8 games in a row, all of a sudden, gonzo. Extra Darius Bazley. Have some more Bazley. You can go ahead and drop Jeremiah Robinson-Earl when he's not playing. I think he's got a game tonight, so head-to-head, you get something out of it. Actually, Oklahoma City has a pretty good schedule this week, don't they? They go 4 times the first 6 days of the week. So for your head-to-head, don't waste a moving on or off of Oklahoma City if you already have one. If you don't, you can add them because they do have a pretty good schedule, and then you can punt on Sunday, squeeze out one extra game in your schedule at that point. But like Roto, no, I'm off of it. I've moved away. Sorry, Robinson-Earl, you've fallen off the roulette wheel. And then with Pokusevski, I'm sure as soon as we all pick him up, he's going to go back to playing 18 minutes a game. It's hard not to because we know what a good fantasy stat set he does have. And so he's always going to be over-rostered because of it. But at the same time, prior to that 34-minute game, his minutes working backwards were 21, 13, 20, 18, 27, 9, 32, 29. That's back when we thought he was going to get minutes every ball game. But he really hasn't, other than 2 times in the last 7 games? That's hard to trust. Problem, of course, is that you kind of have to add him in case it sticks for once. What are the odds it does? I don't know, 1 in 20. But you can't miss it. Clippers beat the Wiz, which is unusual because nobody beats the Wiz. Paul George, big game. Kawhi sat this one out on the back-to-back. This is the one he played this one. He sat the back-to-back out earlier in the week. I'm losing my mind. Kawhi, 30 minutes, 13, 8, and 6. Just getting there little by little. Every ball game, getting there little by little. Am I adding Marcus Morris? I am not. Do I add John Wall? I definitely don't. What do I do with Ivica Zubac now that the Clippers are looking more like the Clippers of yore? You kind of have to hold. He's decent enough most ball games, and he's going to have these extreme clunkers. On the Wizards side, Denny Avdia, very safe stream with Beal out. Jordan Goodwin, extraordinarily safe stream if Monte Morris and Beal are both out. But you kind of have to play that one by ear a little bit. Monte has been in and out of the lineup a bit these days. Corey Kispert, I know he played 43 minutes, but didn't really do anything with it, so you can go ahead and leave him off the board. Goodwin's the one. Avdia is an obvious yes. Goodwin's the one that's sort of hanging in the balance. And for him, I think if Monte's out, I start him. If Morris is playing, I probably don't. I can be talked into it, but probably not. No real changes on the Indiana side. Andrew Nembhard is kind of hanging on by a thread. I think we had him either in the tough hold or the drop discussion from Friday. I honestly don't remember. And he's still right in the middle of that pocket because 32 minutes is pretty good for a guy who's, basically the other ball handler in that first unit. But I'm going to need him to take more than 6 shots in 32 minutes. It's just not enough. And everybody else on this team that played even close to that many minutes had way more shots than that. Halliburton, 15, Hield, 11, Miles, 11. Jalen Smith took 10 shots in only 13 minutes. Mathurin, 9. McConnell, 8. I know Nembhard is deferring. It's sort of part of his nature here as more of a oversized point guard. But I need you to take more than 6 shots. So if you can, on the Roto side, probably sit on him. Don't start him. Head-to-head, he's been decent enough, even in this low roll where you could sit on him. So that's why he falls sort of right in between that tough hold and drop discussion. Brooklyn rested their entire team. Just take that box score, crumple it up, and throw it out the window. Miami, they're in a weird way right now also. It seems like their big guns are ready to play. Now, Caleb Martin has actually been decent even with the starting five lately, but it's just not quite trustworthy enough for me. Keldon Johnson's been getting a little bit better on the San Antonio side. Zach Collins fouled out, but he did finally play normal minutes, which makes him the clear choice if you're streaming. I know Charles Bassey can do more on a per-minute basis, but if the split here is 30 and to 18, you generally trust the guy playing 30. And then Devin Vassell was decent again. I came off the bench in this ballgame, kind of a little bit of a weird look, but he's been good enough all season long, so no adjustments there. And I think, I say this sort of tongue-in-cheek because you guys know that every week I get to the part where I turn the clock all the way back to Friday, and then I go, who didn't play Saturday or Sunday? But I would be disingenuous if I didn't let you guys know that one of my Twitter followers named Matt Jeffrey let me know over the weekend. He said, Dan, to help with Reverse Chronological Lightning Round Monday, the Grizzlies are the only team that didn't play over the weekend. So to Matt, I say, many thank yous. And to all of you guys, I say, the only thing to watch on the Grizzlies is whether or not Steven Adams plays. Because if he doesn't, well, I guess Ja is questionable as well. All right, so you got a few things to watch. If Adams doesn't play, you go hard on Brandon Clark. And if Ja doesn't play, you go hard on Tyus Jones. Also, if Ja doesn't play, John Conchar, who's been what I've referred to lately as a chill stream. He and Torrey Craig are kind of the chill streams. Just like they're going to be almost exactly top 100 level every single game. Which is funny because we talked about Killian Hayes earlier as a guy who probably settles in that 100 range, but he hasn't been chill about it. Killian's been, boom, top 40, top 200. Conchar and Craig, just 100 every game. Chill stream. If Ja's out, Conchar probably gets 2 or 3 more shots, and so then he does elevate beyond the chill stream. Tyus Jones is obviously the one you make the move on quickly. And then Brandon Clark gets a big bump if Steven Adams is out as well. But I'm trusting Matt that everybody else played, so I'm not going to talk about any other games on Friday. I'm not even going to look at them. And instead, I'm just going to tell everybody that that's Reverse Chronological Lightning Round. We will have a what to watch for or storylines or whatever I've decided to call that over on Twitter as we look ahead towards this Monday evening card. 30 teams in, what did we do it in? About 45 minutes? That's what I try to do. A little more, 47 minutes, something like that. 30 teams, 47 minutes. I can dig it. Shout out to our other partners at expressvpn.com/hoopball. That's, again, a specialty link if you want to get a bonus 3 months on your 1-year membership to expressvpn.com/hoopball. And, of course, to thrivefantasy.com. Thrivefantasy.com, promo code there is just ethos. Easy enough. ThriveFantasy.com, promo code ethos. You get a 100% deposit match bonus up to $250. Folks, thanks so much for listening. It's the beginning of week 9. Good luck in your week ahead. Once again, follow me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. And if you want your fantasy news with sources and analysis, that's Ethos Fantasy BK over on Twitter. SportsEthos.com is the main website. We'll talk to you guys on Tuesday, I guess. I suppose that's everything. So long, everybody. And now that those of you watching on YouTube, you remember I told you, special bonus at the end here. But my voice is tired. I find that when I do these things live, I don't take as many vocal breaks. When I'm doing just the recorded pod by itself, I'll pause, take my sip of water, look over there, look over here. All right, if you put a question in the YouTube chat, we're going to roll through these very fast right now because I am also hungry. Let's see. Is Jalen Suggs a hold or a drop for someone like Reggie Jackson or Herb Jones? 13 team, 11 cat, 30% Roto League. So here's the thing. Reggie Jackson is never going to be, 13 teams. He's close. Nah, Reggie's not going to be a 13-teamer. Suggs is also probably not going to be a 13-teamer for Roto. The only guy you've got there that has a shot at 13-team value, I believe, at least in the near future, is Herb. So probably a drop for Herb. Suggs is now going to be battling with Fultz and with Cole Anthony. That's a little bit of a mess. Apologies. Got the sniffles today. Finally caught a kid cold. Dodged the last 3, but those little boogers have boogers. And so now I do as well. Anybody have a basketball haiku before we begin? Let's see. Zion dunking hard. His free throw stroke has improved. Fantasy value. There you go. What's up, Arnold? You're welcome, Josh. Yeah. Yeah, you guys don't know what it's like. It's a really mellow song. It can't be both. I mean, we're talking about number 66 and number 58 here. It's got to be both. You simply must have a weaker player to drop, unless this is like maybe a 10-teamer, 8 or 10-teamer. You'll be able to trade Bol for more than you will Nance. So I guess there's that. Like, if you want to try to move one of them, I don't think you're going to be able to package Nance for much. So maybe try to trade Bol for somebody you like more. I don't know. Tough question, because I wouldn't drop either of them. Yes, it is. What's up? Oh, that was me. I typed that. Yeah, so, I turned the volume off on my mixer. I don't know why it still went through. I guess that's through StreamYard, but I knocked it out a few minutes after that post came through, so that should take care of that. Off the top of your head, who is the active, non-injured 50, 40, 90 type of guy? Oh, my goodness. Well, let's see. Steph, I think, is doing it right now. Is KD doing it? If you're going to go to the top of the board, those are a few guys that have a shot at it. Middleton's done it before. Cat has a shot, but he's hurt. Beal in a good shooting year has a path to it. I think he's at like 87% free throw right now. There aren't very many. It's funny that the 90 free throw might be the thing that gets in the way. There's a lot of like 87s and 88s out there, but 90's tough. It's a good question. I don't have a great answer to it. Sorry, I didn't do very well for you. Yeah, I mean, like Eason was in a lineup that got crushed. So this happens. But I mean, that's the thing with a guy coming off the bench. It's only averaging 18 and a half minutes. If he's in a bad lineup, it's going to smoke you. We need him to be in a lineup that works most games to get up to 22. We need Eric Gordon gone. The short, we can flog this thing all day, but we need Eric Gordon gone, because then everything just falls into place. But until then, his minutes are going to bounce around a little bit. You are right. I talked about that. I didn't see the post, but we got to it. Let's see. Questionable tag. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Nope, not stashing Isaac. I mean, he's probably not going to clear 16 minutes for like the first 3 weeks he comes back anyway. Thanks, Rubens. Yeah, I mean, I did them myself, so they weren't very good. Yes, this I agree with. Don't stash Isaac unless you've got all year to wait on it. Let's see what else. Yep, I agree with you there. Is Randall a sell high? Yeah, probably. He's been shooting the nuts off the ball lately. He's up to number 67 on the year. Free throw stroke is at 80. Field goal percent is at 46. Now, if you can get someone really close to where Julius is at right now, you probably do it. He's number 67. But there's certain guys that I would think about targeting in there. Like maybe McCollum is an interesting one. Maxey coming back soon is an interesting one. I don't think you get Levine. I don't think I'd want Buddy Hield or Oubre. Larry Nance, you don't need to, because then you're buying on Nance after a big ball game. Nicholas Claxton's an interesting one, but I think you could get more for Randall than that. Yeah, I mean, he's a sell high. You might want to see if you have somebody else on your team that's also overperforming in that 60 range and try to aim for like a 40-something guy. That's probably how I'd play it. Similar. I might stick with Franz. He's playing back-to-backs. Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part because if you're going to hold on Vanderbilt, then you have to pass up on interesting stuff on the waiver wire. I get it. Like, we always want what's behind, uh, let's make a deal, the Monty whatever, like, hidden door trick. Vanderbilt is around the 105 range, and technically he's a 12-team start guy in every format with those levels of production. If you don't want to deal with that, then you move on. Here's the thing. Vanderbilt is probably not, without an injury in front of him, going to be like a 50 range guy. He could go on a heater that gets him up to 75, and then you'd feel a little bit regretful. But he also might just cruise along like this, and you might not really worry about it. So if you want to move on, he's not so great that you'll feel really bad about it later. I'd probably hold because most of the guys that are on and off of teams from the waiver wire aren't as reliable as he is. But I also understand it because fantasy should be fun. So if fun for you is flicking guys on and off your roster, then have at it. Better ROS. Harden. I got Harden in this one. I've had him since draft day. Nothing changing my mind on that because Trey with DeJounte coming in, we knew he was going to take a step back. And Harden slimming down was a big thing for him. Thoughts on TJ Warren and 16-teamers? So the trouble there is that they're not going to push him very hard. Brooklyn rested their entire team, including TJ, on Saturday, but like he's in that 16, 17, whatever it is, minutes range. What did he have on Friday night? Let's make sure we actually get the number right on that one. He played 21, a little higher than I remembered. 16-teamers head-to-head makes that tough because he's going to sit out the back-to-backs probably all year. 16-team Roto, I'd be more inclined to take a look at it. Head-to-head, you're looking for a week where they go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, because then you squeeze out the 4 games without a back-to-back, and that's the way that one works. No, you're not getting Freddie VanVleet. You might get CJ McCollum. That's an interesting one. A couple of the names that I was thinking about were guys like Claxton and Heald, actually, who I didn't want for Randall because I thought you could aim higher. But for Bull, who's trending down, they actually make a lot of sense. And I feel like Claxton is a guy that's going to be pretty reliable. I really don't think you guys can get Freddie VanVleet for Julius Randle. Even at his worst right now, VanVleet is still ahead of him. Freddie's 45, and he's been atrocious. Jeremy Grant and Zach LaVine. Who should I be targeting? I'd say somebody in the 30 to 45 range. Reliable 30 to 45, not moving up or down. Maybe like Vooch. Vooch has been very quietly reliable all season long. You could probably get Vooch. You might be able to get Vooch for LaVine by himself if somebody really likes him. Drew Holiday. Beal while he's out. Maybe you could get him when he's healthy. You probably can't. That's about as far as I'd go. Because actually, Zach LaVine's been quite a bit better after his slow start. I know he's coming off a bad ball game, but like he was 120-something the first month, and then the last month he's been like near 70. So it's trending the right way. 60-something over the last 10 games. Yeah, you throw him and LaVine together, I bet you could get someone like Vooch. That might be the way I go. No, you need both. Both of these guys need to be on rosters. Al Horford, even in his deep shooting slump, he's still number 56 over the last 3 weeks. You know, that's like, this is good. He's 57 on the year, oddly enough. Extremely, extremely consistent. Nance is 66. These guys need to be on rosters. 8-teamer. It's a wash. I mean, it's a lateral move. I'd rather, I think, probably have Horford, but, you know, you got to have both. Who do I drop to make room for Robert Williams in a 10-teamer? Geez. That's the magic of the 10-teamer. It's probably Nance. Because it's head-to-head, and, you know, with Larry, a lot of his values tied up in just efficiency stuff. It might also be Kuzma, because, he's coming off a giant game, and obviously he's going to do more when Beal is out. But even with that huge game, he just got to number 97. So prior to that big ball game, Kuzma was not a 10-teamer. Now he sort of is. Probably Jabari Smith Jr. because he's been better, but he's still lacking in some of that stuff that rookies need. That's a tough one, man. I need all these guys on my roster. Make it Nance. He'll probably get hurt. Maybe that's why. You're welcome, Jared. My pleasure. It's a little bonus for the folks that watch us live. What would you look to give up for Time Lord? Well, I actually did a poll on that, and then I did a little bit of a potential trade situation over the weekend on Twitter. Jeremy Grant seemed like a guy that was going to get it done. Buddy Hield got it done 15% of the time, which wasn't really enough. But that's the range I'm looking for. Basically between 50 and 70. Because I think Time Lord, once he gets going, it's going to take a minute. But we know with him, 18 minutes, he's top 75. Starter level, he's a second rounder. So anything in there, as soon as he gets to 18 minutes, Buddy Hield becomes worthwhile. As soon as he gets to 21 minutes, he's probably better than Jeremy Grant. So take that into consideration. Understand that there is going to be a ramp-up period for him, and trade accordingly. And that is our last one. So again, for everybody watching on live on YouTube, which is everybody now at this point, this is not going out on the recorded deal. Please follow on Twitter if you're not already at Dan Bespers. I do so much over there. All the midday stuff, look aheads for the night coming, streamer boards, nightly recaps, all that stuff. That's all over on social media. And again, please do subscribe to YouTube because I'm going to try to do these as many days as I can. We also have, again, this week ahead show coming out at 2 o'clock Pacific time today. That's at 90 minutes from right now. We've got a waiver wire show on Sundays. I do a show with Aaron Brewski typically once a week where we go through the biggest stories. Our YouTube is picking up steam. We got a football show weekly also. That's new for this year. We'll have more baseball shows. Loved it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Really appreciate you guys. I'm going to go have some lunch. So long for now.